After driving 9 hours through a snowstorm to surprise my wife on her promotion, I walked into her office with a cake and heard her tell her boss, "God, I hope he crashes. I could use the freedom." Her boss replied, "So that I can have you all to myself." They kissed. I left the cake at the door. The next morning, I was gone. 3 weeks later, she and her boss regretted everything they said. You ever do something so monumentally stupid that you can practically hear the universe laughing at you? Like, not a polite chuckle, but a full-blown, bent over, tears streaming down its face kind of laugh? Yeah, that was me last Tuesday, white-knuckling my steering wheel through what I can only describe as God's personal vendetta against my windshield wipers. 9 hours. 9 whole hours of driving through a snowstorm that looked like Mother Nature had gotten into a fight with a snow globe factory and lost spectacularly. My name's Logan Pierce, and I'm pretty sure I should have been nominated for Husband of the Year. I mean, who else drives from our quiet suburban town all the way to downtown Chicago in the middle of January just to surprise their wife after her big promotion? I'd even stopped at Delilah's Bakery. You know, that overpriced place where a cupcake costs more than a tank of gas, and picked up Sierra's favorite red velvet cake. The fancy one with the cream cheese frosting that's so good it should probably be illegal. I had that baby seat belted in the passenger seat like it was a newborn heading home from the hospital. Every time I hit a pothole, which was roughly every 4 seconds because Illinois roads are apparently maintained by rabid groundhogs, I'd glance over and make sure it was still intact. The entire drive, I'd been rehearsing my entrance like I was about to audition for some feel-good rom-com. I'd walk into her office building, probably shaking snow off my coat in that ruggedly handsome way that definitely doesn't make you look like a wet dog. Hold up the cake and say something smooth like, "Surprise, babe. Congratulations on the promotion." Then she'd gasp, her eyes would get all misty, her coworkers would applaud like I'd just solved world hunger, and maybe, just maybe, someone would film it and it'd go viral. Best husband in America drives through blizzard with cake, trending on Twitter by dinner time. I should have known better. I should have recognized the signs. But no, I was too busy being Captain Romantic, dodging semis on I-90 while my phone GPS kept rerouting me like it was personally offended by my route choices. At one point, somewhere around the Indiana-Illinois border, I'd stopped at a gas station that looked like it had seen better decades. The attendant, a guy named Frank who had exactly 3 teeth and the energy of someone who'd given up on life around the Reagan administration, looked at me loading up on coffee and beef jerky and said, "Storm's getting worse, buddy. You sure you want to keep going?" My wife just got promoted to senior marketing director. I told him, probably grinning like an idiot. I'm surprising her at her office. Frank had given me this look. You know the look, the one that says, "Oh, you poor, stupid bastard," and just shook his head. Good luck with that, Chief. I should have listened to Frank. Frank knew things. Frank had lived. But no, I pressed on, because apparently I have the survival instincts of a lemming with a death wish. The snow kept coming down like someone had ripped open every pillow in heaven, and my knuckles were practically fused to the steering wheel by the time I finally saw the Chicago skyline emerging through the white chaos. Sierra's office building was downtown, one of those sleek glass towers that screams, "We charge $8 for coffee in our lobby." I'd only been there once before, during some corporate holiday party where I'd spent 2 hours making small talk with people named Chad and Brittany who worked in synergy optimization, whatever the hell that means. I parked in the visitor lot, grabbed the cake, which had miraculously survived the journey with only minor cosmetic damage to one corner, and practically jogged through the freezing cold toward the entrance. My eyebrows were literally frosting over. I'm talking actual ice crystals forming on my face like I was auditioning to be Elsa's stunt double. But I didn't care. I was on a mission. I was bringing joy and buttercream to the woman I loved. The lobby was all marble and pretension, with a security desk manned by a guy who looked like he took his job way too seriously for someone guarding an elevator. I signed in, got my visitor badge, and headed up to the 14th floor. The elevator music was some instrumental version of a Coldplay song, which should have been my second warning sign of the day. Nothing good ever happens to Coldplay elevator music. When the doors opened, I stepped out into one of those open-concept office spaces that Silicon Valley made trendy and everyone else made insufferable. Glass walls, standing desks, motivational posters about crushing goals and thinking outside the box. I walked past a conference room where someone was giving a PowerPoint presentation that appeared to be entirely pie charts. Sierra's office was at the far end of the floor, near the windows with the good view. I could see her door was slightly open, and my heart actually did this stupid little flutter thing. This was it. The moment. The grand romantic gesture. And then I heard her voice, and my entire world shifted on its axis like someone had just told gravity to take a coffee break. God, I hope he crashes, Sierra said, and she was laughing. Not like a nervous laugh or a sarcastic joke laugh. A genuine, from-the-belly laugh. I could seriously use the freedom. I froze. Like, completely froze. The cake suddenly weighed about 400 pounds in my hands. Then I heard a man's voice. Preston, her boss, the guy who'd given her the promotion. Mr. Let's grab drinks after the quarterly review, Preston. So I can have you all to myself, he said, and his voice had that gross, smooth quality that made my skin crawl. I should have walked away right then. I should have turned around, gotten back in my car, and driven those 9 hours straight back home. But curiosity, that beautiful, terrible thing, made me edge closer to the door, just close enough to see through the crack. They were kissing. Full-on, rom-com movie poster kissing. His hands were on her waist. Her hands were in his hair. And my brain just sort of short-circuited. Like someone had unplugged it, kicked it across the room, and then plugged it back in wrong. Well, I thought, with the kind of calm that only comes from complete emotional shock, that escalated faster than the snowstorm. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably 30 seconds, watching my marriage implode in real time through a partially open door. Then, very carefully, very quietly, I set the red velvet cake down right there on the floor outside her office. Didn't knock. Didn't say a word. Didn't announce my presence with any of the fanfare I'd planned. I just turned around and walked away, my boots squeaking on the polished floor, past the pie chart presentation, past the motivational posters, past the security guard who asked if I was okay because apparently I looked like I'd seen a ghost. Peachy, I told him. Just peachy. The drive home was going to be even longer than the drive there, I realized as I stepped back out into the cold. And I was pretty sure Frank at the gas station was going to give me that look again when I stopped for more coffee. But hey, at least the cake had made it there in one piece. That was something, right? So here's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't really hit you all at once like they show in the movies. It's not some dramatic slow-motion moment where you fall to your knees in the rain while a sad piano plays in the background. No, it hits you in waves, like someone's throwing emotional sucker punches at random intervals just to keep you on your toes. The first wave hit me somewhere around mile marker 47 on the drive away from that office building, right when my brain finally caught up with what my eyes had witnessed. I'd been driving on autopilot for about 30 minutes, knuckles white on the steering wheel, windshield wipers working overtime against the snow that just wouldn't quit. The highway stretched out in front of me like some kind of frozen Hell's Cape, and I realized I had absolutely no idea where I was going. Home. That didn't feel like home anymore. That was Sierra's place, filled with her vanilla candles and her motivational wall art that said things like live, laugh, love, and good vibes only. Yeah, great vibes, Sierra. Really nailed that one. My phone started buzzing in the cup holder. Then it buzzed again, and then it basically had a full-blown seizure of notifications. I didn't even look at it. Couldn't. Every buzz felt like a tiny electric shock reminding me that my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, had just realized I'd been there. She'd probably found the cake. Maybe she'd even figured out that the mysterious cake delivery wasn't some kind of corporate congratulations gift, but actually her husband's shattered dreams in buttercream form. The snow was getting worse, visibility dropping to approximately 3 feet in front of my bumper, and I made an executive decision. I was not driving 9 more hours through this frozen nightmare. I'd rather sleep in my car at a rest stop than risk becoming a cautionary tale on the evening news. Local man dies in blizzard after discovering wife's affair. Cake found at scene. That's when I saw it. The Starlight Motel, a beacon of desperation off exit 62. And when I say beacon, I mean the kind of flickering neon sign that screams, "We charge by the hour and don't ask questions." The place looked like it had been built sometime during the Carter administration and hadn't seen a renovation since. The parking lot was half full of cars that had clearly seen better decades, and there was a shopping cart in the corner that I'm pretty sure had been there long enough to qualify for residency. I pulled in, turned off the engine, and just sat there for a minute, watching the snow pile up on my windshield. This was my life now. A $79 a night motel that looked like the physical manifestation of rock bottom. The office was attached to the front of the building, and when I walked in, a bell above the door made this sad little tinkling sound. Behind the desk sat a woman who looked like she'd been chain-smoking since approximately 1987. Her name tag said Brenda, and she was watching what appeared to be a soap opera on a TV that had to be older than me. "Need a room?" she asked without looking away from the screen, where two people were having a dramatic confrontation in what looked like a hospital. "Yeah," I said, my voice coming out rougher than I expected. "Just one night. $79. Cash or card? Wi-Fi password is on the back of your key card, but fair warning, it works about 60% of the time." She finally looked at me, and something in her expression shifted. Maybe it was the probably obvious devastation on my face, or maybe she'd just seen enough broken people come through those doors to recognize one of her own. "You okay, honey?" "Peachy," I said, pulling out my credit card. "Living the dream." Brenda gave me this look that said she'd heard that line about 1,000 times before. "Room 12. It's around back. Hot water works. TV gets about 7 channels, and the heater's a little loud, but it does the job." She slid the key card across the counter. "And honey, whatever you're going through, it gets better, or at least different." "Thanks, Brenda," I said, and I actually meant it. Room 12 was exactly what you'd expect from a $79 motel off a highway exit. The carpet was that industrial pattern designed specifically to hide stains. The wallpaper was peeling in the corners like it was trying to escape to somewhere better, and the comforter on the bed had a floral pattern that probably seemed trendy in 1993. The ceiling fan wobbled precariously overhead, making this rhythmic clicking sound like it was counting down to the moment it would finally give up and crash onto whoever was unlucky enough to be sleeping below it. I dropped my overnight bag. Thank God I'd thrown one in the car before leaving, on the chair by the window, and collapsed onto the bed. The mattress made a sound like it was sighing in sympathy. Above me, the ceiling fan continued its death wobble, and I found myself staring at it, thinking, so this is marriage, huh? This is what 9 years together gets you. A wobbling ceiling fan and a front row seat to betrayal. That's when my phone decided to completely lose its mind. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Text after text after call after text. I finally grabbed it and looked at the screen. 47 notifications. 47. Sierra was having a full meltdown in digital form. "Where are you?" "Logan, please answer me. It's not what you think. We need to talk. You're being ridiculous. Please just come home. You misunderstood what you saw. Preston and I were just celebrating. Why aren't you answering? This is so immature. And my personal favorite, it's not what it looks like." I actually laughed at that one. Actually laughed out loud in that depressing motel room with my potential murder weapon ceiling fan as my only witness. "Lady, I saw your tongue down another man's throat." Unless this was some kind of emergency CPR training exercise that involved romantic lighting and office privacy, it was exactly what it looked like. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I opened my messages and scrolled to my best friend's name, Theo Morales. We'd been friends since college, where he'd been the guy who actually studied while the rest of us pretended we'd read the textbooks. Now he was an accountant with the body of someone who lived at the gym and the personality of someone who thought protein shakes could fix everything. He was also the most loyal human being I'd ever met. I typed, "Need a place to crash." Long story. The response came back in under 30 seconds. "Doors unlocked. Beer's cold. Bring the drama." I smiled for the first time in hours. That was Theo. No questions asked, no judgment, just automatic brotherhood. He lived about 2 hours away in a suburb that was basically halfway between my town and Chicago, which meant I could make it there by midnight if I left now. But I didn't leave. Not yet. I just lay there on that questionable mattress, listening to the heater rattle and the ceiling fan click, watching my phone light up over and over with Sierra's increasingly desperate messages, and thought about how 9 hours of driving through a snowstorm had somehow led me here. To the Starlight Motel, where dreams went to die and Brenda dispensed wisdom with key cards. At least the Wi-Fi worked. That was something. I made it to Theo's apartment around midnight, which in retrospect was probably not the best time to show up at someone's doorstep looking like an extra from a disaster movie. The snow had finally let up somewhere around the Indiana-Illinois border, but I was running on approximately 3 hours of sleep for cups of gas station coffee that tasted like regret and the emotional stability of a Jenga tower in an earthquake. Theo lived in one of those modern apartment complexes that tried really hard to look expensive, but ended up looking like every other apartment complex built after 2015. You know the type: gray siding, black trim, a name like the Residences at Wherever that made it sound way fancier than it actually was, and a gym on the first floor that Theo probably single-handedly kept in business. His place was on the third floor, Unit 304, and true to his word, the door was unlocked. I walked in and immediately tripped over a dumbbell. Because of course Theo had dumbbells just lying around his entryway, like normal people have shoes. The man's apartment looked like Dick's Sporting Goods had a baby with a bachelor pad. There was a weight bench where most people would put a coffee table, resistance bands hanging off the coat rack, and I'm pretty sure that decorative bowl on the counter was actually full of protein powder. Logan. Theo appeared from the kitchen holding 2 beers, wearing a tank top that said, "Leg day is the best day," which was absolutely a lie. The man looked like he'd been carved out of granite by a really enthusiastic sculptor. "Bro, you look like death took a sick day and sent you to fill in." "Thanks, man. Really feeling the love," I said, accepting one of the beers and collapsing onto his couch. And let me tell you about this couch. This couch had stories. This couch had seen things. It was one of those leather sectionals that had clearly been through multiple breakups, probably hosted a few crying sessions, and definitely absorbed enough beer to qualify as a fire hazard. There were permanent but indents in the cushions and a throw blanket that looked like it had fought in a war. Theo sat down next to me, angling his body toward me with that intense focus he usually reserved for calculating compound interest or perfecting his deadlift form. "So, talk to me. What happened?" And so I told him everything. The whole ridiculous story poured out of me like I was some kind of therapeutic fountain. The 9-hour drive, the snowstorm, the cake, walking into that office building like an idiot, hearing Sierra's voice saying she hoped I'd crash, seeing her kiss Preston, leaving the cake on the floor like some kind of sad calling card, and ending up at the Starlight Motel where Brenda, the chain-smoking oracle, had told me things would get better or at least different. I held that beer like it was holy water the entire time, taking swigs between sentences, and Theo just listened. That's the thing about Theo. When it mattered, the guy could actually shut up and listen, which is a rare quality in someone who normally talks about macros and muscle groups like they're religious concepts. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he said, with complete sincerity, "Man, she's not worth hypertension. Let's go to the gym." I stared at him. "Theo, buddy, light of my life. If you ever invite me to lift weights while I'm heartbroken again, I will personally bench press you through that window. I'm just saying, endorphins are scientifically proven to." Theo. Right. Too soon. Got it. He took a swig of his beer. "She's a piece of work, man. Always thought she was a little too obsessed with that whole career woman aesthetic. Like, it's cool to be ambitious, but she acted like she was running a Fortune 500 company when she was literally selling overpriced hand cream to Instagram moms. It was luxury skincare." I corrected automatically, then realized how stupid that sounded. Which is apparently code for overpriced hand cream to Instagram moms. Yeah, we sat there for a while, just drinking beer and watching SportsCenter on mute because Theo had it on 24/7 like it was his screensaver. Around 2 in the morning, I finally crashed on that legendary couch, using the war veteran throw blanket, while Theo went to his bedroom. Just before he closed the door, he stuck his head back out and said, "Hey, Logan, you're gonna be okay, man. And tomorrow, we're getting you a lawyer. Or at least someone who knows what the hell to do with joint bank accounts." Smart man, that Theo. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of eggs and the sound of something sizzling. Theo was in the kitchen wearing an apron that said "Grill Sergeant" and making what appeared to be a protein-heavy breakfast that could feed a small army. "Morning, sunshine," he said cheerfully. "Made you an omelet. Egg whites, spinach, and chicken breast. Theo, I love you, but if you don't have any actual food with flavor, I might cry." He laughed and pointed to the pantry. "Pop-Tarts are in there. Brown sugar cinnamon. Don't tell my trainer. After breakfast, Pop-Tarts, because I'm an adult and I make my own choices." Theo made a phone call to someone named Milt. "He's a financial advisor," Theo explained, phone pressed to his ear. "Retired Marine. Helped my cousin Dave through his divorce last year. Guy's a wizard with assets and stuff. An hour later, we were sitting in a Starbucks across from Milt Richardson, who looked exactly like what you'd expect from a retired Marine turned financial advisor. Buzz cut going gray, posture so straight it made my spine hurt just looking at him, and a handshake that could probably crush walnuts. He smiled like a man who'd seen 30 divorces and knew exactly how this story would end. Son, he said, opening his laptop with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Tell me about your financial situation. Joint accounts? Shared credit cards? Whose name is on the mortgage? I walked him through everything. The joint checking account we'd opened 5 years ago when we'd combined finances like naive idiots in love. The savings account that was supposed to be for a down payment on a bigger house. The credit card we both had access to for emergencies and household expenses. Milt typed away, occasionally making these little sounds that made me increasingly nervous. After about 20 minutes of silence punctuated only by keyboard clicks and my growing anxiety, he turned the laptop toward me. Okay, he said, so here's the situation. Your wife has been spending an average of $14,800 per month for the last 6 months. I choked on my coffee. $14,000 per month. Give or take a few hundred. He scrolled through what appeared to be a spreadsheet from hell. Let's see. There's a lot of charges to places called Glow Beauty Bar, Serenity Spa, The Lash Lounge, something called Soul Cycle, multiple charges to Whole Foods that honestly seem excessive unless she's feeding a small village, and approximately 47 charges to various brunch restaurants. He looked up at me over his reading glasses. Your wife really likes brunch. I couldn't even form words. That's more than I make in a month. Yep. Milt leaned back in his chair. Congratulations, son. You've been sponsoring her influencer lifestyle. All those Instagram posts about self-care and wellness? You paid for them. Theo whistled low. Dude, that's cold. What do I do? I asked, feeling panic rising in my chest like carbonation in a shaken soda bottle. Milt's smile turned slightly predatory. First, we freeze that joint account faster than Elsa in a snowstorm. Second, we document everything. Third, we protect your assets before she realizes what's happening. He closed his laptop with a decisive click. Step 1 of healing, gentlemen. Protect your wallet before your heart. 20 minutes later, I was on the phone with my bank, freezing our joint account while the customer service representative, a nice lady named Patricia who sounded way too chipper for someone facilitating financial warfare, processed my request. And you're sure you want to freeze the account, Mr. Pierce? Patricia asked. Patricia, I said. I have never been more sure of anything in my entire life. Alrighty then. The account is now frozen. Your wife will receive notification via email and mail within 24 hours. I hung up and looked at Theo and Milt. Well, that's done. Milt raised his coffee cup in a toast. Welcome to the first day of your financial freedom, son. There's something deeply weird about breaking into your own house. And yeah, I know it's technically not breaking in when you still have the keys and your name is on the mortgage, but when you're sneaking in at 11 in the morning on a Wednesday while your wife is at work, well, administrative leave, but who's keeping track? It sure feels like a heist. Ocean's 11, except instead of stealing millions from a casino, I was stealing back my own underwear and dignity. Theo had offered to come with me for moral support, or as he put it, backup in case she comes home early and goes full psycho, but I declined. This was something I needed to do alone. Plus, Theo's idea of moral support usually involved unnecessarily aggressive pep talks and protein shakes, neither of which seemed appropriate for the occasion. I pulled into our driveway. Sorry, her driveway now, I guess, and just sat there for a minute with the engine running. The house looked exactly the same as it had 2 weeks ago when I'd left for that catastrophic surprise visit. Same white siding, same black shutters, same decorative wreath on the front door that Sierra had bought from some boutique that charged $80 for dried flowers arranged in a circle. The whole place screamed suburban Pinterest dream, which was exactly what Sierra had always wanted. Me? I just wanted a place with a good water heater and minimal homeowner association drama. Mrs. Chun from next door was outside checking her mailbox, because apparently that's what retired people do at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday. She spotted me immediately and waved with the enthusiasm of someone who definitely wanted to gossip. Logan, she called out, shuffling across her lawn in those puffy slippers that looked like bare paws. Mrs. Chin was approximately 1,000 years old, had lived in this neighborhood since dinosaurs roamed the earth, and knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves. I haven't seen you in weeks. Where have you been? Hey, Mrs. Chun, I said, getting out of the car with my empty duffel bags. Just been traveling. For work. She narrowed her eyes at me like I was a suspect in a crime drama. Traveling? Sierra said you were visiting family. Of course she did. Yeah, that too. Family work trip. It's complicated. Mrs. Chun was not buying it. Well, I saw Sierra leaving this morning. She looked terrible. I mean, I don't want to gossip, but she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Everything okay with you too? Everything's great, Mrs. Chun. I lied through my teeth. Just peachy. Hey, I gotta grab some stuff from inside, but it was great seeing you. I practically speed walked to the front door before she could ask any more questions. The last thing I needed was the neighborhood gossip mill running with this story before I'd even finished packing my stuff. The door unlocked with a click that sounded way too final, and I stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. Vanilla. That damn vanilla candle, she burned constantly. The one from that boutique store where a single candle costs $45 and supposedly promotes positive energy and emotional balance. Real balanced, Sierra. Really nailed that emotional stability thing. The house was quiet in that eerie way that houses get when they know something's wrong. You know what I mean? Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I dropped my bags by the door and just stood there in the entryway, looking at our life, my former life, spread out in front of me. There was the console table we'd bought together at that overpriced furniture store, the one where the salesperson had convinced us that mid-century modern was worth an extra $400. The framed photos on the wall chronicling our relationship. Engagement photos at the beach, wedding day, vacation in Colorado, that one Christmas when we'd worn matching ugly sweaters and thought it was hilarious. I looked at that photo of us grinning like idiots in those ridiculous sweaters and felt something twist in my chest. Nope, I said out loud to the empty house. Not doing this. We're here for a mission, not a therapy session. I headed upstairs to the bedroom, each step creaking in that familiar way that I'd memorized over the years. Our bedroom, her bedroom now, I had to keep reminding myself, looked like a hurricane had hit it. Clothes everywhere, makeup scattered across the dresser, the bed unmade. Sierra had always been messy when she was stressed, and apparently getting caught making out with her boss, and then losing said job qualified as stressful. I grabbed my biggest suitcase from the closet and started throwing in clothes. All my jeans, my favorite hoodies, my entire t-shirt collection featuring various bands from the early 2000s that Sierra had always hated. You're 32, Logan. Maybe it's time to retire the My Chemical Romance shirt, she'd say. Well, joke's on her, because Gerard Way and I are about to be roommates at Theo's place. Then I packed the important stuff. My laptop, the external hard drive with all my photos and documents, the watch my grandmother had given me before she died, my old baseball card collection from when I was a kid that was probably worthless but meant everything to me. I grabbed my toiletries from the bathroom, toothbrush, deodorant, that fancy shampoo I actually liked, and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I looked rough. 2 weeks of couch surfing and emotional devastation had not been kind. There were bags under my eyes that could pack for a weekend trip, and I was pretty sure I'd aged at least 5 years. But there was something else there too, something that looked almost like relief. In the spare bedroom. The one we'd always said would be a nursery someday, but it ended up being Sierra's home office/storage space for all her influencer equipment. I found my gaming console, still hooked up to the TV we barely used. Sierra had always complained about video games being a waste of time, which was rich coming from someone who spent 3 hours a day taking photos of her breakfast for Instagram. I unplugged everything carefully, wrapped the cords, and packed it all up. That's when I spotted Biscuit's toy box in the corner. Biscuit was my dog. A golden retriever who was currently staying at my parents' place because Sierra had claimed she was allergic when we'd first gotten him. Spoiler alert. She wasn't allergic, she just didn't want to deal with dog hair on her white furniture. I grabbed his favorite squeaky hamburger toy and his special blanket that smelled like home. He'd want those. With my essentials packed, I stood there in the middle of the house and felt something shift inside me. Sadness? Sure. Anger? Definitely. But also something else. Something that felt suspiciously like liberation. And that's when I decided to get petty. Not mean. Not destructive. Just petty. The kind of petty that would make her life slightly more inconvenient without actually causing any real damage. The kind of petty that would make Theo proud and probably make Milt shake his head in disappointment. First stop, the thermostat. Sierra was basically cold-blooded, like a very judgmental lizard in designer jeans. She kept the house at a toasty 75 degrees year-round, which made our heating bills look like we were trying to heat a small warehouse. I turned that baby down to 60. Let her come home to an icebox. Maybe she'd finally use one of the 17 throw blankets she'd bought from HomeGoods. Next, the Wi-Fi. I pulled up the router settings on my phone. Thank God I was the one who'd set it up and changed the password. The new password? He crashed your career. Too on the nose? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. She'd have to call the internet company and explain why she didn't know her own Wi-Fi password, and I hoped that conversation would be deeply awkward. Then came my masterpiece, the coffee beans. Sierra was one of those people who claimed she couldn't function without her morning coffee, specifically the expensive organic fair trade beans she ordered from some hipster roaster in Portland. I found her stash in the freezer because apparently that's where fancy people keep coffee beans, and replace them with decaf. Same bag, same brand, completely different experience. She'd never know until she was 3 cups in and wondering why she still felt tired. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it therapeutic? You have no idea. I did one final walkthrough of the house, making sure I had everything I needed and nothing I didn't. In the kitchen, I grabbed my favorite coffee mug, the one that said, "World's okayest husband," which felt painfully ironic now, and took one last look around. This had been our home, our life, our future, and she'd thrown it away for what? A promotion? An affair with her boss? The thrill of something new? Whatever it wasn't worth what we'd built. But that was her choice, not mine. I pulled out a sticky note from the junk drawer, one of those bright yellow ones Sierra used for her endless to-do lists, and wrote in big, clear letters, "Cake's on your office floor. So is our marriage." I stuck it on the counter where she'd definitely see it, right next to the coffee maker that would soon be brewing her a very disappointing cup of decaf. Then I grabbed my bags, walked out the door, and locked it behind me. Mrs. Chun was still outside, now pretending to water plants that clearly didn't need watering. "Got everything you need?" she called out. "Everything that matters," I called back. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I actually meant it. Living with Theo was like being roommates with a motivational poster that had somehow gained sentience and learned to cook chicken breasts 17 different ways. The man woke up at 5:30 every morning. 5:30. To do something he called morning mobility work, which as far as I could tell involved making weird groaning noises while stretching in positions that looked like they violated several laws of physics. Then he'd make a protein shake that sounded like a blender murdering vegetables, shower, and head to his accounting firm by 7. Me? I'd been spending my mornings lying on the couch of broken dreams, staring at the ceiling, and wondering if it was possible to divorce someone via interpretive dance just to make the whole process more interesting. The answer, according to Google at 3 a.m., was no. Disappointing, really. It had been a week since the Great Extraction, as Theo had started calling it, and I'd settled into a routine that could generously be described as functional depression with occasional snacks. I'd been working remotely from Theo's apartment. Thank God my job as a software developer meant I could basically work from anywhere with Wi-Fi and crushing existential dread. My boss had been surprisingly cool about the whole going through a divorce thing, probably because I'd been pulling 16-hour days just to avoid thinking about my imploded marriage. Sierra had been suspiciously quiet since discovering my sticky note and her new Arctic living conditions. No calls, no texts, no drive-bys. Just eerie, unsettling silence. I'd expected World War III, complete with dramatic voice messages, and maybe her showing up with a marching band to guilt-trip me. Instead, nothing. Radio silence. It was like she'd just accepted defeat and moved on, which honestly made me more nervous than if she'd gone full Fatal Attraction. "She's plotting," Theo had said that morning while doing bicep curls with dumbbells that probably weighed more than my entire emotional baggage. Women don't go quiet unless they're plotting. It's like when a toddler stops making noise, something's about to get destroyed. That's weirdly specific. I'd replied from my horizontal position on the couch. I have 3 nieces. I know things. It was around 7 p.m. on a Tuesday when Theo's doorbell rang. We were in the middle of watching some documentary about a guy who climbed a mountain without any gear, because apparently Theo's idea of relaxing entertainment was watching people risk death for fun. I was eating pizza, real pizza, with actual cheese and carbs, because I decided that if my marriage could fall apart, I could at least enjoy gluten, and Theo was eating what he claimed was cauliflower crust, but what I suspected was actually cardboard with delusions of grandeur. You expecting someone? I asked, because Theo's social life was usually limited to gym buddies and the occasional date with women who thought his obsession with meal prep was cute, instead of deeply concerning. Nope. He got up to answer the door, and I heard him say, "Oh, hey, Sierra." I choked on my pizza. Actually choked. A piece of pepperoni went down wrong, and I spent the next 30 seconds coughing like I was trying to dislodge a lung, while Theo patted my back with what I'm pretty sure was more force than necessary. When I finally recovered and looked up, there she was. Sierra Pierce, soon to be Sierra whatever her maiden name was, standing in Theo's doorway looking like a discount rom-com star who'd been through a car wash of emotions. Her makeup was smeared, not like, oh no, a single tear smeared, but like, I've been crying in my car for 45 minutes smeared. Mascara tracks down her cheeks, lipstick slightly outside the lines like she'd applied it in the dark, the whole 9 yards. She was wearing what I immediately recognized as her apology outfit. That specific combination of clothes she wore when she knew she'd messed up and needed to look simultaneously vulnerable and put together. Skinny jeans that she knew I liked. The soft blue sweater I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. Her hair down in those loose waves that took her an hour to achieve, but were supposed to look effortless. The whole ensemble screamed, "I'm sorry, please take me back." And I felt absolutely nothing. Well, not nothing. I felt annoyed. And maybe a little hungry because she'd interrupted my pizza. "Logan," she said, her voice doing that wobbly thing that indicated tears were imminent. "Can we talk?" Theo looked at me, then at Sierra, then back at me with an expression that clearly said, "Want me to tackle her?" I gave him a tiny head shake. "Sure," I said, setting down my pizza and standing up. "Talk." She stepped inside without being invited, which was very on-brand for Sierra. The woman had always had a gift for assuming she was welcome everywhere. She looked around Theo's apartment, at the weights, the protein powder, the motivational quotes on the wall, the couch I'd been living on, and I could see her judging all of it. Her nose did that little wrinkle thing it always did when she encountered something she considered beneath her standards. "Here?" she asked, glancing at Theo like he was an unwanted audience member. "Here's fine," I said. Theo's already heard the whole story anyway. No point in secrets now, right? Theo, bless him, plopped back down on his chair and grabbed his cauliflower cardboard pizza, ready for the show. Sierra's eyes darted between us, and I could see her recalculating her approach. "I didn't mean it," she blurted out finally. "What you heard at the office. It was a joke. Preston and I were just kissing." I cut in, keeping my voice level. "Practicing CPR? Testing each other for mono? What's the official story we're going with here?" "It wasn't. You don't understand the context." "Context," I repeated, and I couldn't help the laugh that escaped. "Right? The context. Please, enlighten me. What's the context for telling your boss you hope your husband crashes in a snowstorm so you can be free?" She flinched. I was venting. I was stressed. The promotion was overwhelming, and you were being so clingy and clingy, Theo muttered from his chair. He drove 9 hours through a blizzard with a cake. That's not clingy. That's literally the opposite of clingy. That's, like, the definition of a good husband. Sierra shot him a look that could have melted steel. "This is between me and Logan. And yet here we are, in my apartment," Theo shot back. "So technically it's between all three of us. Want some pizza? Oh wait, you don't eat carbs after 6. My bad." I almost smiled. "Almost." "Sierra," I said, drawing her attention back to me. "You kissed him. I saw it. It wasn't a joke, it wasn't stress, it wasn't venting. You kissed your boss and said you wanted me out of your life. So why are you here?" "Because I made a mistake." Her voice went up an octave, tears now actually falling. "I made a stupid mistake and I lost everything. Preston dumped me after HR got involved. I lost my job. I'm probably blacklisted in the industry. And I lost you. Everything fell apart." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Everything did fall apart. Weird how that happens when you cheat on your spouse." We weren't having an affair, she insisted, but her voice was weak. It was just one kiss. One moment of weakness. I was caught up in the promotion and the attention and you forgot you were married? I forgot how good I had it, she said, and her voice broke completely. I forgot that I had someone who would drive 9 hours through a snowstorm just to surprise me. I forgot that I had someone who loved me that much. There was a long silence. Somewhere in the apartment, Theo's refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car alarm went off and then stopped. You don't understand, she whispered. I understand Newton's third law, I said, and I heard my voice coming out flat, emotionless. Every action has an equal and opposite consequence. You acted. This is the consequence. From his chair, Theo whispered with genuine awe. Bro, that's deep. You sound like a podcast. Sierra looked between us, her face crumpling. So that's it. You're just done? You won't even try? Try what, Sierra? Try to forget that you kissed someone else? Try to forget that you literally wished I would crash and die so you could be free? Try to pretend that you spending 15 grand a month on brunches and fake eyelashes while I worked overtime was normal? I shook my head. I'm not trying anything. I'm done trying. That's the point. I loved you, she said, and she sounded desperate now. Past tense, I noted. Interesting choice. She stood there for another moment, mascara running, bottom lip trembling, looking like every sad music video ever made. Then she turned and walked out, her footsteps echoing in the hallway, and I heard her start sobbing before the door even fully closed. The apartment was quiet except for the documentary guy who was apparently still climbing his death mountain. You okay? Theo asked after a minute. Yeah, I said, and I realized I actually meant it. Yeah, I think I am. I sat back down, picked up my pizza, and took a bite. It was cold now, but whatever. Cold pizza was still pizza. Theo nodded approvingly. Want me to teach you some deadlifts tomorrow? Great for processing emotions. Theo. Yeah. I love you, man, but absolutely not. He grinned. Fair enough. Want me to at least teach you how to change your relationship status on Facebook? That's therapeutic too. Now that, I said, pulling out my phone, I can get behind. But first, I Googled how to emotionally relocate to Mars, just to see if technology had caught up with my needs. Spoiler alert, it hadn't. 3 days after Sierra's dramatic performance in Theo's living room, I was sitting at his kitchen table working on some code that had been giving me problems for the better part of a week when my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd ignore random numbers, probably spam, probably someone trying to sell me extended car warranties or inform me I'd won a cruise I definitely didn't enter to win. But something made me click on it. Thought you'd want to know? The message said. Preston Hartley got suspended today. HR investigation. Your wife too. The whole office is talking about it. I stared at my phone like it had just sprouted legs and done a little dance across the table. Then I read it again, and then a third time, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. Theo. I called out. He was in his bedroom, probably doing push-ups or organizing his sock drawer by color and fabric weight or whatever it is that obsessively organized gym rats do with their free time. Yeah, he yelled back. I think karma just pulled up with receipts. 30 seconds later, Theo emerged wearing gym shorts and a tank top that said, "Sun's out, guns out," which was ironic because it was February and definitely not sunny. He was also holding a protein shaker bottle, because of course he was. Show me, he demanded, and I held up my phone. He read the message, his eyes getting wider with each word, and then he let out a laugh that could probably be heard in the next county. Bro, are you kidding me right now? I don't think I am. I said, still processing. I don't even know who this is. The number's not saved. My phone buzzed again. Same number. This is Jade from Sierra's old marketing team. Got your number from the company directory before they deleted her access. Thought you deserved to know your soon-to-be ex is getting what's coming to her. Also, most of us never liked her. She was insufferable at meetings. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Jade. I vaguely remembered meeting her at that horrible holiday party. Short, spiky purple hair, nose ring. Always looked like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. She'd made a comment about the shrimp cocktail being the only good thing about corporate events, and I'd immediately respected her life choices. Who's Jade? Theo asked, reading over my shoulder like the nosy best friend he was. Someone from Sierra's office. Apparently, she's my new favorite person. My phone buzzed a third time, and this time it was a link. I clicked it, and oh, this was beautiful. This was chef's kiss level beautiful. It was a video. Grainy, probably from a security camera or someone's phone from down the hallway, but clear enough. Timestamp showed it was from 3 weeks ago, the day of Sierra's promotion, the day I'd made my doomed cake delivery. And there they were, Sierra and Preston, in what was clearly her office doorway, engaged in what could only be described as aggressive face-sucking. His hands were on her waist. Her hands were in his hair. It went on for a solid 15 seconds before they broke apart, and you could hear Sierra's laugh, that specific laugh she did when she thought she was being clever. Holy crap, Theo breathed. Someone recorded it. Someone recorded it. I repeated, still staring at my phone in disbelief. Jade sent another text. Anonymous tip to HR yesterday. Funny how those things work. Enjoy your day, Logan. You deserve better than her. I sat back in my chair, phone still in my hand, trying to process this absolutely beautiful turn of events. Preston Hartley, Mr. Senior Vice President, Mr. Corner Office, Mr. I can have you all to myself, had been suspended. And Sierra, who'd climbed that corporate ladder like her life depended on it, had gotten what people in the business world euphemistically called administrative leave, which was basically code for, we can't fire you yet because lawyers, but you're definitely getting fired soon. You know what the best part is? Theo said, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. She probably thinks you did it. I didn't though, I said quickly, because I actually hadn't. Sure, I'd thought about it. I definitely thought about it. But I'd been too busy eating my feelings via pepperoni pizza and trying to figure out how to divide a Netflix account to actually do anything. I know that, and you know that, Theo said, but she doesn't know that. And that's hilarious. He was right. It was hilarious. It was possibly the funniest thing that had happened in this entire nightmare situation. Somewhere in her overpriced apartment with her fancy candles and her designer throw pillows, Sierra was probably having a meltdown, convinced I'd orchestrated this whole thing like some kind of heartbroken mastermind. As if on cue, my phone rang. Sierra. I showed Theo the screen, and he immediately started making the decline gesture with his hands like he was trying to land a plane. I declined. It felt good. Really good. Like popping bubble wrap or peeling the protective film off new electronics. She called again. Declined again. Then came the text. We both made mistakes. I stared at that message for a long moment. We both made mistakes. We both. Like this was some kind of shared responsibility situation. Like I'd somehow contributed to her making out with her boss and wishing death upon me during a snowstorm. What are you going to say? Theo asked, leaning over my shoulder again. I thought about it. I could write a long message. I could write paragraphs about betrayal and consequences and how her mistake had blown up our entire life together. I could be eloquent and devastating and really drive home the point. Or I could keep it simple. I typed, I made a cake. You made out. Theo read it and immediately snorted coffee out of his nose, which led to about 2 minutes of him coughing and wheezing while I patted his back. When he finally recovered, eyes watering, he wheezed. Bro, that's cold. I'm frosty, I corrected. There's a difference. What's the difference? Cold is unintentional. Frosty is deliberate and sparkly. Theo considered this. I don't think that's the actual definition, but I'm here for it. I hit send and immediately got the satisfaction of seeing those 3 little dots appear, indicating Sierra was typing. They appeared and disappeared about 6 times over the next 2 minutes, which meant she was writing and deleting responses, probably cycling through anger and guilt and more anger. Finally, she sent, You're being cruel. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Sorry for not being sympathetic to your self-inflicted career implosion? Sorry for not feeling bad that your affair partner got suspended? Sorry for the natural consequences of your own actions? Yeah, no. I was fresh out of apologies. My phone rang again, but this time it was a different number. I answered cautiously. Hello, Mr. Pierce? This is Detective Sarah Morrison with Chicago PD's Cybercrimes Unit. My stomach dropped. Okay. I'm calling because your name came up in an investigation. Someone submitted a video to a company's HR department that may have been obtained through unauthorized access to security footage. We're following up on all potential persons of interest. Oh, for the love of Detective Morrison, I didn't send any video to anyone. I don't even know how to access security footage. I can barely figure out how to record shows on my DVR. Can you tell me where you were yesterday between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.? I was here at my friend's apartment, working remotely. I'm a software developer. My friend Theo was at work. He's an accountant. But his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, can probably confirm I was here because she knocked on the door at lunch to ask if we'd seen her cat. We hadn't. The cat was fine, by the way. It was in her bathroom the whole time. There was a pause. I see. And you didn't send any videos or communications to Hartley Industries' HR department? No, ma'am. Honestly, I found out about the whole thing like 20 minutes ago from someone who used to work with my soon-to-be ex-wife. Another pause. All right, Mr. Pierce. Thank you for your time. We may follow up if we need additional information. Cool. Great. Love being a person of interest. Really adds excitement to my Tuesday. She hung up, and I looked at Theo. The cops think I did it. Did you? No. Then you're fine. Also, that's actually kind of badass. They think you're capable of cyber revenge. He thought about it. Are you capable of cyber revenge? Theo, I write code for a company that makes scheduling software for dental offices. The most rebellious thing I've done with a computer is use incognito mode. He patted my shoulder. It's okay, man. We all have our limits. For the rest of the day, my phone was basically a notification factory. People I hadn't talked to in years were suddenly reaching out. Old coworkers, random acquaintances, even my cousin Derek, who I'd specifically avoided at the last 3 family reunions because he exclusively talked about cryptocurrency. Heard about Sierra, Derek's text read. Karma's a blockchain, bro. I didn't even know what that meant, but I appreciated the sentiment. By evening, Theo and I were back on the couch, him with his sad cauliflower pizza and me with actual food that tasted like joy. The news about Preston and Sierra had apparently spread through their entire company like wildfire, and Jade had been kind enough to keep me updated with increasingly entertaining messages about the office drama. Preston's wife showed up. One text read, "Security had to escort her out. She threw a stapler." "I respect the stapler throw," I said, showing Theo. "Staplers are underrated weapons," he agreed. "Good weight distribution." My phone buzzed one more time. "Sierra, I know you did this." I showed Theo, who grinned. "You gonna correct her?" I thought about it. Then I typed, "You give me way too much credit. I can barely remember to water plants." But I didn't send it. Instead, I just put my phone face down on the coffee table and went back to my pizza. Let her think whatever she wanted. I was done explaining myself. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for Sierra to cycle through every single stage of, "I screwed up, and now I need you back" desperation. And let me tell you, it was like watching someone speedrun through a relationship crisis handbook written by someone who'd learned about human emotions exclusively through Hallmark movies and Instagram captions. Week 1 was all voicemails. So many voicemails. My inbox looked like it had been attacked by an audio missile strike. They started out apologetic. "Logan, please. I'm so sorry. Can we just talk?" And progressively devolved into what I can only describe as emotional hostage negotiation tactics. There was the crying voicemail at 2 a.m. where she was apparently calling from her car in a Whole Foods parking lot, sobbing about how she'd made the biggest mistake of her life and how she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. This from the woman who'd once told me she hoped I'd crash in a snowstorm. Real convincing, Sierra. Then there was the angry voicemail, the one where she'd clearly had half a bottle of wine and decided that actually, this was partly my fault for not being emotionally available and prioritizing work over us. Which was rich, considering I'd driven 9 hours through a blizzard with a cake because I was so prioritizing her that I'd basically turned into her personal delivery service. My personal favorite was the philosophical voicemail where she quoted Rumi, yes, the poet, and talked about how the wound is where the light enters and how we could heal together through this darkness. I played that one for Theo, who'd been doing pull-ups on the bar he'd installed in his doorway, and he'd laughed so hard he'd literally fallen off mid-rep. "Bro," he'd wheezed from the floor, "she's quoting poetry. She's reached the poetry stage. That's desperate. Is there a stage after poetry?" I'd asked. "Yeah, it's called showing up with a boombox playing Peter Gabriel. And if she does that, we're calling the cops." I didn't respond to any of the voicemails. Not one. I just let them pile up like emotional spam, a monument to Sierra's increasingly creative attempts at manipulation. There was something weirdly therapeutic about watching the number go up, 17, 23, 31, and doing absolutely nothing about it. Week 2 is when things got weird. And by weird, I mean she started sending me stuff. Physical stuff. Through the mail. Like we were in some kind of twisted pen pal situation, except instead of fun stickers and stories about summer camp, I was getting guilt trips wrapped in bubble wrap. First came a photo album. One of those fancy leather-bound ones she'd made a year ago during her brief scrapbooking is self-care phase. Every page was us, vacation photos, date nights, random Tuesday evenings on the couch. She'd written little captions in her perfect handwriting. Best day ever. And my favorite person, and forever. I'd flipped through it exactly once while Theo made gagging noises in the background, then shoved it in a drawer where it could live out its days in darkness like it deserved. Then came the hoodie. My favorite hoodie, the gray one from that brewery we'd visited in Colorado, the one I'd been looking for before I moved out. She'd packed it in one of those vacuum seal bags like she was preserving evidence, and there was a note attached. So you don't forget my smell. I'd held up the bag, shown it to Theo, and said, she vacuum sealed the hoodie. That's, Theo had searched for the right word. Unhinged. That's unhinged behavior. It smells like lies and lavender. I'd added, tossing it onto the couch. Lies and lavender, Theo had mused. Sounds like a terrible indie band. The hoodie sat on that couch for 3 days before I finally opened it, put it in the wash twice to get rid of whatever perfume she'd apparently doused it in, and reclaimed it. It was my hoodie. She didn't get to weaponize my hoodie. But the weirdest part of those 2 weeks wasn't Sierra's increasingly desperate attempts at contact. It was the way the rest of the world had started reacting to my situation. Somehow, despite my best efforts to keep things quiet, word had spread through the neighborhood grapevine faster than a conspiracy theory at a PTA meeting. Theo's neighbors had started calling me divorce guy. Not to my face, obviously. They weren't that rude. But I'd hear them when I was taking out the trash or checking the mail. Oh, there's divorce guy. Someone would whisper, like I was some kind of cautionary tale they'd been using to scare their own spouses into good behavior. That's the guy whose wife cheated with her boss. Drove through a snowstorm with a cake and everything. The first time I heard it, I'd been mortified. The second time, I'd been annoyed. By the 5th time, I'd fully embraced it. I was divorce guy. That was my identity now. I'd even started waving when people stared. Morning, Gladys. I'd called a Theo's neighbor, who was approximately 90 years old, and spent most of her time watching the parking lot like it was a reality TV show. Beautiful day for emotional devastation, isn't it? Theo thought this was hilarious. You've reached acceptance, he'd said. That's the final stage of grief, right? Acceptance and sarcasm. I think I skipped a few stages and went straight to sarcastic acceptance, I'd replied. Is that allowed? In my professional opinion, as someone who's watched a lot of Dr. Phil? Absolutely. I'd even started making pancakes shaped like broken hearts. Not intentionally at first. I was just really bad at making pancakes. But once Theo had pointed out that my misshapen breakfast disasters looked like anatomically incorrect broken hearts, I'd leaned into it. Added food coloring. Made them red. Served them with a side of bacon that I'd arranged to spell out nope. This is either really healthy or really unhealthy, Theo had observed, taking a photo of my breakfast art, and I genuinely cannot tell which. Can it be both? I'd asked, drowning my heartbreak pancakes in syrup. The whole situation had taken on this surreal quality, like I was watching my life happen to someone else. There was Logan before, the guy who'd been married, who'd had a house and a wife and a plan for the future, and Logan after, who lived on his best friend's couch, made depressing breakfast art, and had somehow become a minor celebrity in an apartment complex where the average age was 65. Then, on day 13 of the Great Silence, my phone rang with a number I vaguely recognized. I answered without thinking, which was my first mistake. Logan? It's Maya, Sierra's sister. Of course. I should have known she'd eventually get deployed like some kind of family diplomat sent to negotiate a peace treaty. Hey, Maya, I said, my voice flat. Let me guess. Sierra asked you to call. She's worried about you, Maya said. And she had that same tone Sierra used when she was trying to sound concerned, but was actually just annoyed. The Pierce family special. She says you won't talk to her. That's correct. Don't you think you're being a little dramatic? I actually laughed. Dramatic? Yeah, Maya, I'm being dramatic. You're absolutely right. I should be way more chill about my wife making out with her boss and wishing me dead in a blizzard. That's totally normal marriage stuff. My bad. She didn't mean it that way. Which part? The kissing part or the hoping I crash part? Because I'm pretty sure both of those things meant exactly what they sounded like. There was a pause. I could hear Maya regrouping, preparing her next argument. She'd always been like this, even back when I'd first started dating Sierra. Maya was the fixer, the one who smoothed everything over, the one who could convince you that black was actually white if she talked long enough. Look, she said finally, I know what Sierra did was wrong. But you're overreacting. She made a mistake. She's confused. The promotion was overwhelming. Preston was manipulative, and she just got caught up in. Yeah, I interrupted. She confused her lips with a career opportunity. Silence on the other end. That's really, Maya started. What? Mean? Harsh. Not as harsh as driving 9 hours through a snowstorm only to hear your wife actively wishing for your death. But sure, I'm the bad guy here. She lost everything, Logan. Her job, her reputation, her marriage. And whose fault is that, Maya? Mine? Did I kiss her boss? Did I spend $15,000 a month on brunch and fake eyelashes? Did I tell someone I wanted my spouse to crash and die? Because I'm pretty sure that was all Sierra. You're being impossible. I'm being divorced, I corrected. There's a difference. She loves you. Maya tried one last time, her voice going soft. She really does. She made a mistake. Cool, I said. She can love me from a distance. Preferably a distance of about 9 hours. In a snowstorm. And then I did something that felt absolutely beautiful. I hung up. Just pressed the red button and ended the call. No dramatic speech, no final statement, no clever last word. Just click. Silence. My phone buzzed immediately. Maya trying to call back. I declined. She tried again. Declined. Then she sent a text. You're making a huge mistake. I didn't respond. I just turned my phone face down on Theo's coffee table and went back to the very important business of eating cereal straight from the box while watching a show about people who bought houses in exotic locations. Theo emerged from his bedroom wearing running shorts and a look of approval. Was that Sierra's sister? Yep. What did she want? To tell me I'm overreacting and Sierra's just confused. And you said that Sierra confused her lips with a career opportunity, then hung up. Theo slow clapped. Beautiful. Poetic. Savage. 10 out of 10 would support that response again. The silence that followed was beautiful. No buzzing phone, no voicemails piling up, no guilt trips arriving in vacuum-sealed packages. Just peace. Quiet. The sound of me eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Theo doing whatever weird stretches he thought counted as active recovery. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Week 3 of my post-marriage life hit like a bad sequel nobody asked for. You know, the kind where the studio realized they had a semi-successful movie and decided to milk it for every penny despite having absolutely no good ideas left. Except in this version, instead of explosions and car chases, I got an email from Sierra at 6:43 in the morning that was so void of her usual drama, it actually scared me a little. Subject line, I'm sorry. Body, I lost my job. I'm sorry. I deserve everything that happened. That was it. No flowery language, no poetry quotes. No, the wound is where the light enters philosophical nonsense. Just 3 sentences that landed in my inbox like a sad little bomb made of reality and consequences. I stared at my phone. Theo's couch had become my official morning headquarters, complete with a permanent butt print and a collection of empty coffee mugs that I really needed to take to the kitchen, and felt something weird happen in my chest. Something that felt suspiciously like sympathy. Like maybe, just maybe, I should feel bad for her. I almost did. Almost. Then I remembered the kiss. The laugh. God, I hope he crashes. And the sympathy evaporated faster than my will to adult on a Monday morning. Yo, you good? Theo emerged from his bedroom wearing running gear that probably cost more than my first car. The man was gearing up for his morning 6-mile run because apparently some people enjoy suffering before breakfast. Sierra lost her job, I said, holding up my phone like it was evidence in a trial. Theo jogged over, because of course he couldn't just walk like a normal human, and read the email over my shoulder. Damn, that's actually kind of sad, right? I set the phone down. I almost felt bad. But But then I remembered she's the architect of her own disaster. Like, she didn't accidentally trip and fall mouth first onto her boss. She made choices. Bad choices. Choices that came with consequences. Fair. Theo agreed, stretching his hamstrings in a way that made my knees hurt just watching. You gonna respond? And say what? Sorry your affair partner dumped you after HR got involved. Bummer about that whole losing your career thing. Thoughts and prayers. Theo snorted. You could just not respond. Silence is a response. Silence is absolutely a response. I agreed. It's my favorite response lately. He finished his stretches and headed for the door, stopping to grab his water bottle and wireless earbuds. Hey, random thought. You should post a photo of a cake on Instagram. Caption it something like, "Some desserts don't age well." I stared at him. That's evil. That's what I'm here for. Support and occasional mild villainy. He grinned. Think about it. I'll be back in an hour. Try not to spiral into an existential crisis while I'm gone. After he left, I sat there imagining it. Posting a photo of a red velvet cake. Maybe even getting one from the same bakery, with that caption. Sierra would definitely see it. She still followed me on Instagram, probably hoping I'd post something that would give her ammunition or insight into my mental state. I imagined her scrolling through her feed, probably while lying in bed surrounded by tissues and empty wine bottles and those overpriced candles that supposedly promoted healing. And then bam. Cake photo. Devastating caption. I didn't do it, but I laughed for a solid 10 minutes just imagining her face. That had to count for something, right? Maybe that was growth. Maybe growth was being able to imagine petty revenge without actually executing it. Or maybe I was just too lazy to go to the bakery. Either way, I felt pretty good about myself. What I did do, though, was something Theo had been bugging me about for the past week. I started actually trying to rebuild my life instead of just existing in a holding pattern of couch dwelling and cereal eating. First stop, the kitchen. Real cooking. Not just heating up frozen pizza or eating Pop-Tarts straight from the package like some kind of divorced raccoon. I went to the grocery store, alone, like a grown-up, and bought actual ingredients. Chicken breast, Theo's influence. Vegetables, my mom would be proud. Pasta, because I'm not a monster. And ingredients for homemade marinara sauce because apparently I was feeling ambitious. The grocery store was weird. I'd been going to the same one for years with Sierra, following her around while she deliberated over organic versus conventional tomatoes like it was a matter of national security. Now I was alone, throwing stuff in my cart based purely on "do I want to eat this?" criteria. It was liberating. Also slightly terrifying. Did I need fresh basil? I had no idea. I bought it anyway. Cooking that night was actually kind of therapeutic. I put on music, stuff Sierra had hated, because she'd claimed classic rock was too aggressive for meal prep, and just cooked. Chopped vegetables, sautéed garlic, let the sauce simmer while I boiled pasta. The apartment smelled amazing, and when Theo came home from his evening gym session, yes, he went twice a day, the maniac, he actually stopped in the doorway and looked stunned. "Did you cook?" he asked, like I'd just performed magic. "I did," I said, plating up 2 servings like I was on some cooking show. "And it's not even cauliflower-based. It's beautiful," he said, and I genuinely couldn't tell if he was joking. We ate at his tiny kitchen table, and it was good. Like, actually good. I'd made something with my own hands that wasn't code or broken-hearted pancakes, and it tasted like maybe I was going to be okay. The next thing I did, and this was entirely because Theo's neighbor Mrs. Patterson had suggested it during one of our parking lot conversations about her cat's digestive issues, was sign up for a photography class at the community center. One of those evening classes for adults who wanted to learn hobbies or just had too much time on their hands. "It'll be good for you," Mrs. Patterson had said, adjusting her extremely large sunglasses even though it was overcast. After my divorce in '92, I took up watercolors. Painted 73 pictures of my ex-husband on fire. Very therapeutic. I didn't ask follow-up questions. I just signed up for the class. The photography class was on Thursday evenings in a room that smelled like old coffee and new beginnings. The instructor was a woman named Carol who was approximately 65 and had the energy of someone who'd seen it all and was just here for a good time. There were 8 of us total. Me, 3 women in their 50s who'd clearly signed up together and treated it like a social club. A college kid who was definitely only there because his girlfriend dragged him, said girlfriend, and a guy named Marcus who showed up with a camera that probably cost more than Theo's car. "Welcome, everyone," Carol announced on our first night. "Photography is about capturing moments, telling stories, and occasionally making your ex look bad in candid shots. Who's here because of a breakup?" I raised my hand. So did two of the women in their 50s. Marcus raised his hand halfway, then seemed to reconsider. "Excellent," Carol said. "This is a safe space for emotional processing through aperture settings." Now let's talk about composition. I learned that I was actually kind of terrible at photography. My first attempt at capturing an emotion resulted in a blurry photo of Theo's living room that Carol generously described as abstract. But there was something nice about focusing on something other than my failed marriage. Something nice about looking at the world through a lens and trying to find things worth capturing. Week 3 became week 4. Sierra's email remained unanswered in my inbox, a little monument to silence and boundaries. I cooked more meals, attended more photography classes, started going to the gym with Theo, not because I suddenly loved exercise, but because he'd promised to stop talking about it if I just came once. That was a lie. He never stopped talking about it. I even smiled. Like, genuinely smiled. Not the fake smile you give cashiers or the sarcastic smile you give people when they ask if you're okay. A real smile, the kind that reached my eyes and felt like maybe things were actually getting better. The world hadn't ended when Sierra kissed Preston. It hadn't ended when I found the vacuum-sealed hoodie or hung up on Maya or ignored that sad email. The world had just gotten quieter. Simpler. Like someone had turned down the volume on all the chaos and let me hear myself think for the first time in years. One night, I was sitting on Theo's balcony. Yes, he had a balcony, because apparently accountants make good money, drinking a beer and watching the sunset. It was one of those moments that felt almost cinematic, like someone should be playing a thoughtful indie song in the background. Theo joined me, carrying his inevitable protein shake. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and I realized I meant it. "Yeah, I think I actually am." "Character development," Theo said sagely. "I'm proud of you, man." "Did you just reference character development?" "I contain multitudes," he said, taking a sip of his shake. "Mostly protein, but also multitudes." I laughed, and it felt good. Easy. Natural. Maybe Brenda from the Starlight Motel had been right. Things did get better. Or at least different. And different, I was learning, was pretty damn good. The text came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at the community center, attempting to photograph what Carol had called urban decay, but what I was pretty sure was just a rusty shopping cart someone had abandoned near a dumpster. My artistic vision was still very much under construction. "Can we meet? Just once. For closure. Please." "Sierra." "Of course." Because apparently closure was the magic word that was supposed to make me forget everything and agree to sit across from her like we were in some kind of therapy session. I stared at the text for a solid 3 minutes while Marcus, my photography classmate with the expensive camera, came over and looked at my shopping cart composition. "That's either profound or deeply sad," he said. "Can't tell which." "Story of my life, Marcus," I replied, still staring at my phone. I shouldn't have agreed to meet her. Every fiber of my being that had developed even a shred of self-preservation over the past month was screaming, "Bad idea, abort mission, run away." But there was this tiny, stupid part of me, the part that had driven 9 hours through a snowstorm with a cake, that thought maybe I needed this. Maybe I needed to look her in the eye one more time and confirm that yes, this was really over, and yes, I was really okay with that. So I texted back, "Fine. Brewster's Coffee downtown. Thursday at 2 p.m. Brewster's was neutral territory. It was one of those hipster coffee shops that charged $7 for a latte and had approximately 15 different milk alternatives, none of which were actually milk. Sierra and I had never been there together, which meant no memories to wade through. No, we used to sit at that table moments. Just overpriced coffee and the impending closure conversation. Theo had opinions about this meeting. Many opinions. "Bro, this is a trap." He said that Wednesday night, while meal prepping chicken breasts for what appeared to be the next 3 years. The man had containers. So many containers. She's gonna cry, say she's changed, probably touch your hand across the table all meaningful like. Classic move. "I can handle it," I said, with way more confidence than I felt. "Can you though?" He pointed a spatula at me. "Because last time she showed up, You went into robot mode and quoted physics. Which was cool. Don't get me wrong. But I need to know you're not gonna crack. I'm not gonna crack. Say it with more conviction. I'm not gonna crack. Better. Want me to come as backup? I could sit at another table, pretend to read a newspaper like a spy. Theo, nobody reads newspapers anymore. You'd look insane. Fine, I'll look at my phone like everyone else. But I'll be ready to intervene if she starts quoting more poetry. Thursday arrived faster than I wanted it to. I spent way too long deciding what to wear. Not because I wanted to look good for Sierra, but because I wanted to look like I was doing fine. Better than fine. Thriving, even. I settled on jeans and a button-down shirt that Theo approved of, though he suggested I lose the sad energy before I left. How do I lose sad energy? I'd asked. Stand up straighter. Think about literally anything besides your ex-wife. Maybe think about pizza. That's your solution? Think about pizza. Pizza has never let you down, Logan. Sierra has. The choice is obvious. I arrived at Brewster's at 1:55 p.m. because apparently I was the kind of person who showed up early to their own emotional execution. The place was exactly as pretentious as I remembered. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture that was probably supposed to look vintage but just looked uncomfortable, and a chalkboard menu that featured something called a turmeric oat milk cordido. I ordered a regular coffee, just coffee, no adjectives, and grabbed a table near the window. Sierra walked in at 2:07, which was actually early for her. She'd always operated on what she called fashionably late, but what everyone else called just late. She spotted me immediately, and I watched her take a breath before walking over, like she was preparing to jump into cold water. She looked different, smaller, somehow, like the past month had physically shrunk her. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of those perfectly styled waves she usually spent an hour creating. No makeup, or at least way less than usual. She was wearing jeans and a plain sweater, nothing designer, nothing Instagram-worthy, just regular clothes. She looked, for lack of a better word, defeated, like her ambition had been replaced with reality, and reality had hit her with a folding chair. "Hi," she said softly, sliding into the seat across from me. "Hey," I replied, wrapping my hands around my coffee cup like it was a shield. Awkward silence. The kind of silence that physically hurts, where you can hear every cough and coffee machine hiss in the entire building. A barista dropped something behind the counter, and we both jumped. "Thanks for meeting me," Sierra finally said. "I wasn't sure you would." "Yeah, well, here I am." More silence. She was fidgeting with her fingers, twisting the ring that used to be her wedding band, but that she'd apparently moved to her right hand. Symbolic, I guess. "I miss you," she said, and her voice cracked just slightly. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no residual love. Just nothing. It was like looking at a stranger who happened to know all my Netflix passwords. "I miss being naive," I replied. She flinched. "That's fair." Yeah, that's fair." "Is it?" I leaned back in my chair. "Because I'm not sure anything about this situation is fair, Sierra. I drove 9 hours through a blizzard to surprise you, with your favorite cake. And you were kissing your boss and actively hoping I'd die in a car crash. So forgive me if I'm not feeling super charitable about the whole thing. I know." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I know what I did. I know what I said. And I've had a month to think about nothing else." She looked up at me, and her eyes were already getting watery. "I lost everything, Logan. My job, my reputation, my friends. Everyone at the office thinks I'm a joke. Preston won't even return my calls. My own sister barely talks to me. And I lost you. And whose fault is that?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Mine," she said immediately. "All mine. I know that. I'm not trying to blame you or make excuses. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I threw away. What I lost." A tear rolled down her cheek, then another. Within seconds, she was full-on crying, trying to keep it quiet, but failing spectacularly. The couple at the next table was definitely watching. This was peak coffee shop drama. "I just wanted to feel free," she sobbed. The promotion was so overwhelming, and Preston was paying attention to me in this way that felt exciting. And you were always so stable, so predictable. And I thought I wanted something different, something that made me feel alive. She grabbed a napkin from the dispenser and pressed it to her face. But I didn't realize what that freedom would cost. I didn't realize that exciting meant empty, that different meant alone. I sat there, watching her fall apart across from me, and I knew I was supposed to feel something. Sympathy, maybe. Victory, perhaps. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of the drama, tired of the explanations, tired of being cast as a supporting character in Sierra's personal crisis. I just wanted space, she said, looking at me with mascara. Wait, she was wearing mascara. I guess she'd put on some makeup after all, starting to run down her cheeks. I couldn't help it. The corner of my mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile, but definitely wasn't sympathetic. Well, I said, and I heard my voice come out colder than I intended. Congrats. You've got 9 hours of snow between us. That's a lot of space. Her face crumpled completely. Logan, I hope you find what you're looking for, Sierra. I really do. But it's not going to be with me. I stood up, leaving my half-finished coffee on the table. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your safety net. I'm not the guy who waits around while you figure out what you want. Please don't go, she whispered, but she didn't move to stop me. Take care of yourself, I said, and I meant it. Not in a loving way or a hopeful way, but in a this is the last thing I'll ever say to you way. I walked out of Brewster's coffee shop, leaving Sierra sitting there with her tears dripping into her $7 latte, mascara creating modern art on her face. Through the window, I could see her sitting there, a tragic masterpiece of her own creation. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Theo, how'd it go? Do I need to bring ice cream? I typed back, nah, I'm good. Actually good. And the weird thing? I drove back to Theo's apartment with the windows down even though it was freezing, letting the cold air blast my face, and I felt lighter than I had in months. Maybe years. Like I'd been carrying around this weight I didn't even know was there, and someone had finally cut the straps. When I got back, Theo was waiting with 2 beers and an expression that said he'd been ready to stage an intervention if necessary. So, he asked, handing me a beer. So, I said, dropping onto the couch of broken dreams. I think I'm actually done. Done? Or done until she sends another vacuum-sealed hoodie. Done. Like, finally, genuinely, completely done. Theo clinked his beer against mine. Proud of you, man. That's character development right there. You leveled up. Did I, though? Or did I just finally reach the baseline of normal human self-respect? Can it be both? I laughed, and it felt good. Really good. The kind of good that comes from knowing you did the right thing, even when the right thing feels cold and hard and unforgiving. Sierra could sit in that coffee shop and cry into her latte. She could miss me, regret her choices, wish things were different. But I was done being her audience. 3 weeks after the coffee shop meeting, I found myself standing in front of Delilah's Bakery, the same overpriced place where this whole disaster had started, staring at a red velvet cake through the window like it held the secrets to the universe. Or at least the secrets to closure, which at this point felt pretty much the same thing. You getting a cake, or are you just going to stand there looking creepy? The voice belonged to a teenage employee who'd stuck her head out the door, probably wondering why some random dude was having an existential crisis on the sidewalk. Yeah, I said, snapping back to reality. Yeah, I'm getting the cake. 10 minutes later, I was walking out with that familiar white box, except this time there was no 9-hour drive ahead of me, no rehearsed speeches, no delusions about being husband of the year. Just me, a cake, and a pretty solid sense of who I actually was now. Back at my new apartment. Yeah, I'd finally moved out of Theo's place and into a 1-bedroom that didn't smell like protein powder and ambition. I set the cake on the counter. My counter. In my space. That I paid for with money that wasn't being spent on $15,000 monthly brunches. I pulled out my phone, positioned the cake just right, and snapped a photo. The lighting was decent. Carol from photography class would be moderately proud. Caption, finally delivered. I sent it to Sierra's number before I could overthink it. Her response was instant. The phone rang within 5 seconds, her name lighting up the screen like a warning sign. I stared at it, watching it buzz and ring and demand my attention. I didn't pick up. The voicemail notification popped up a minute later. I almost didn't listen to it. Almost. But curiosity, that beautiful, terrible thing, made me press play. Her voice was quiet, tired. I get it. I hope you find someone who deserves your miles. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in my empty apartment. It was the first thing she'd said in months that felt genuine. No manipulation, no poetry, no desperate attempts at reconciliation. Just acknowledgement. I deleted the voicemail. Blocked her number. Done. Finally, actually done. Then I grabbed a knife, cut myself a massive slice of that red velvet cake, and raised it like a toast to my empty apartment. To freedom, I said out loud, because apparently I talked to myself now, and that was fine. The kind you don't need someone else to wish for. I took a bite. The cake was exactly as good as I remembered. Maybe better, actually, because this time it wasn't weighted down with expectations and doomed romantic gestures. This time it was just cake. Delicious, overpriced, perfectly frosted cake. My phone buzzed. Theo, did you seriously just post a cake on Instagram? Me, absolutely did. Theo, that's cold, bro. Me, I'm frosty. There's a difference. I finished my slice, put the rest in the fridge for later, and looked around my apartment. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom with decent water pressure and neighbors who minded their own business. But it was mine. Still standing. Still breathing. Still not sharing dessert with anyone named Sierra. And honestly, life tasted pretty damn sweet.